Today, I'm gonna show you how to make these badass lanterns, both cheap and easily. Stay tuned. Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. As I said before, today we're gonna be learning how to make some badass lanterns. Whether you want them for like a LARP or any kind of event, or you just like to decorate like, I do, I think you're gonna really like how this is put together. So with that, we're just gonna jump right into it, but do give me some of that like and love, and don't forget to subscribe at any point if you like this content. All right, so this first lantern here I'm doing, the general design I'm going for is kind of like an orcish or a barbarian's rawhide lantern. I've been wanting to make a rawhide lantern forever. I just seldom have like the materials at my disposal to do it. And quick aside here, I didn't have the materials. I decided I wanted to do this kind of last minute. I didn't have any rawhide. I thought I could just go to like Tandy Leather and pick some up. Nope, they have really thick rawhide, but not anything that I actually needed. Because remember, I'm using this as a lantern. I need light to be able to pass through this. So if it's too thick, it's not really useful for me. But in the short amount of time I had, I discovered a workaround. And that's using these rawhide bones for dogs. I got two varieties, ones that were already kind of flat, and another one that had that kind of classic bone shape. The thought here is to soak them overnight in water to hopefully loosen them up and make them so I can actually do something with them. Now, I got a whole bunch of really mixed results when I looked this up online to see if it was even feasible. Some people saying it would be kind of a waste of time because the rawhide is usually like junk, it'll just fall apart. Some saying it's okay, but they use it for like backing on things or stuff you won't generally see. But I figured, what the hell, let's check it out. And soaking this stuff actually really worked. It ended up being super loose and kind of gummy. Interestingly enough, the wrapped up bone had a much thinner rawhide, which you'd think would work like perfectly for our purposes. But I wanted to stretch it out and let it dry out to really see if it would work for what we needed. The smaller ones, although they did end up being like very loose and pliable, they also kind of plumped up a little bit, which is kind of the opposite of what we wanted. We wanted it to be nice and thin, so again, light can shine through it. But having worked with leather and seeing like how much you can stretch something when it's wet like that, I thought maybe if we could stretch it enough or thin it out enough somehow, we could still get that effect. But first things first, I laid it on some towel just to help soak up some of that wetness and make them less like slippery. They're like really gummy and hard to hold on to when they're really wet. But after it dried a little bit, it was pretty easy to kind of grab the ends of it and give it a good stretch. And this right away actually kind of worked. Like you can see, this one with just a little bit of stretching is noticeably thinner than the other one. So I just kept at it, kind of pulling it and stretching it in all these different directions. Now you're gonna notice if you try this, it definitely stretches more in one direction than it does in another, which is exactly the same way leather is too. You're gonna find like one direction tends to stretch more than the other. I also decided to experiment using like a rolling pin to see if I can get that to work. And again, if I'm going in that right direction, the direction that it stretches more, it actually really did work pretty well. As you can see here, we were able to stretch it out to be like 2 inches longer than the one next to it. And already you can kind of see the transparency starting to happen there. You see that shadow behind it, which is exactly what we're looking for. The thinner piece that I got from the rolled up one, however, is it's too thin. Like first of all, it had this rip in it already that makes it hard to use. But then even just kind of pulling on it a little bit, it feels like almost like a thick paper towel. It wants to rip. You got to put a little bit of work into it, but it very easily wants to rip. So my next problem was if I just left them to dry, it would like curl back up and actually shrink back to kind of its original size. I don't want that. I want it to stay like stretched out as much as possible. So I decided to kind of use the method that is like a traditional method anyways. Though I think traditionally it's like tied, there's be like a frame made and it's tied up really tightly so it's stretched out. I decided to just kind of nail it to this board here, starting with the corners and stretching it as much as possible, and then just kind of working my way, putting a nail in and then stretching out the opposite side to try to keep as much tension on it as possible. Though after that first one, where I was just kind of like brute strength trying to pull it, I did discover a couple of easier ways. The first actually isn't pulling it, but it's like letting your fingers like press down hard on it and let your finger slide across the surface of it. You can actually feel like the fibers in it breaking down and moving around that pressure you're kind of exerting as you go out towards the edges. I just found this to be way less harsh on my hands as it was going rather than like trying to like curl it and grab it. It also made a much more even spreading of those fibers rather than like grabbing around the edges, which wouldn't stretch the very edges out, it would just stretch the middle. But although that worked out, even easier still is if you happen to have one of these little pasta makers here. I use this one specifically for flattening out my clay before I use it, but it actually worked for this perfectly. I just kind of slowly fed it into the machine, using those rollers to again push away all those fibers. It's got a little clicker on the side so you can close those rollers even tighter. So I'd go through with the largest setting first, and then go back and close it just one click, and then go through again. By the time it reached all the way down to its lowest setting, the rawhide was actually really thin. I'm not gonna lie, I thought that was one, really cool, but two, it was just so easy to do. Another thing I didn't get footage of, but it's something now I'm interested in. So there was a residue left over on those little turners there that once they dried, like at first it was very, very sticky, like super sticky, and then dried super hard. And I know that you can make a glue out of rawhide. So I think next thing I want to try with this eventually is chopping that rawhide up, boiling it down, and seeing if we can make some kind of a glue out of it. If you know anything about that, leave it down in the comment section below. I'm really curious about it. Anyway, I just took all of these and kind of crazily pinned all of them to a board, like some kind of a sadistic butterfly collection. All right, so while those harden up, I'm gonna go ahead and make the actual frame that's gonna sit around. Again, I'm going for a really rustic, kind of orcish or barbarian feel to this one. And also again, I'm going real cheap, just as cheap as possible. So I went outside and I got sticks. Just as many like thumb thickness sticks as possible. I mean, not as possible. If you gave me enough time, I can get you some sticks, I'll tell you what. But you know, as needed for the project. I cut 5 sections of these sticks to be 5 inches long, and then 2 sections to be 4 inches long. These are gonna end up being my platform that everything else is built off of. To make that platform, I just laid down 2 thinner sticks and then put my cut sticks across them to form kind of this raft. Now, let me preface everything that follows by saying, you just hot glue it, man. You just get underneath there, you throw some hot glue together, no one's gonna see it, it's fine, it's whatever. I, on the other hand, I wanted to try my hand at lashing, which is kind of a pain in the ass. To do it, I'm actually using this fake sinew here, just because I think it'll go along with the rest of the project. It'll look like, you know, sinew and rawhide. It's a vibe, I like it. To make my life easier, I actually just put little notches in either end of the shortest sticks there, just so it would have more to grab onto because it is so much shorter than the rest of everything. All right, the lash that I'm attempting to do with this is called the floor lash, I believe. And it is exactly for this. It's for making like a floor of something, be it a raft or maybe like a hut. The lashing itself is dead simple. You just kind of tie it off to the running rail here. Then I go over that smallest stick, behind the rail, and then back around over the next stick. Then behind the rail again, then over the next stick, and you just kind of keep going that way. Then once you reach the end, you just tie it off tightly to that rail, and you have it. It's just there now. I know what you're thinking. That seems very simple. Why were you saying it's a pain in the ass? Well, when you have a bunch of little sticks that you're trying to keep straight and you're trying to do all this, well, you also are trying to keep your stupid hands out of the way for a camera. It's a freaking nightmare. Y'all don't know the struggles of trying to film these stupid things while you're also trying to make them. It's gonna be much easier for you than it was for me, I guarantee it. Again though, hot glue, can't recommend it enough. That would have been like this, done. Whatever. Okay, so I'm sure you're curious as to why we have those shorter sticks on the ends. Well, that's because I want to have these uprights here that are going to fit right into that little space. I just didn't want them sticking out way past the rest of my little raft there. I cut these bad boys to be like 8 inches high. Those corner sticks, I'm going to leave a little bit down so they can become like the feet of my little candle holder. And then I'm going to use what's called a lashing knot or a square, lashing square. I'm going to put a link down in the description to like the knot site that I use to do this. It's much more clear than what I'm showing you. But you're basically just tying it to that rail again, going over that corner stick, going around that rail, back over the corner stick in the other way, and then back around the rail. And you just do this over and over again to like secure those two together and then tie it off at the end. Again, really simple knots, extremely hard to show you on camera. After doing that 4 times, I just used exactly the same knots to put these 4 pieces across the top to help finish out that frame. Then happy with that, I simply went in with my saw and cut away any of the excess. This leaves me with this super rustic, cute, actually strong little frame for it just being lashing. It's pretty tight, it's a good little thing. And by the way, I say I use these lashing knots and whatever in the most like high sense possible. I try to. There was definitely times where I like lost the pattern and I'm like, F it, let's go. And just kind of tied it off in whatever way I could. But it worked, it's fine, it's rustic, you're good. Cool, so at this point, our rawhide was completely dry. And look at it, look at how cool that came out. I actually have some extra pieces I didn't end up using. Like, look at that. That is like a little stereotypical like leather shape, right? Like a tanning shape. These end up being fantastic. They're not as translucent as I would really like, but like you can definitely see the shadow behind them. They let more than enough light through. These are great. The one I got from the rolled bone, however, it is really good. Like again, it lets way more light through. It looks cool. Only a little bit is usable though. So for the cost, I'd way prefer these. They come in like a pack of 20 of them versus this one bone that's like the same price and you don't get a lot you can use out of it. Not only that, but even though it's hardened, like it just rips, just tears really easily. So yeah, certain use cases, sure. Just not what I wanted to work with this time around. Just as an aside too though, like this stuff, if you were to shape this to be maybe a knife sheath or something, it's just gonna stay in that shape and it is like rock hard, this one. I really think I like working with rawhide, it's pretty cool. All right, so to get it into the right shape, I actually just cut out a paper template first and made sure it fit into the little spaces where it would go onto the lantern. Here's the thing, after putting that little square up, I thought it looked kind of boring and I really like this shape. Like I like that shape of this is a piece that has been stretched over it and it's kind of shrunk into that position. It just looks more of the vibe I'm going for. So I just went ahead and cut them to that shape. Then I simply punched some holes into the corners or into the areas where like this is pulling, right? Like wherever this would go. And used a needle and some wax thread to just go through those holes and wrap around the sticks to tie it into place. And look at it. Look at how freaking cool that thing looks. That is exactly the vibe I was going for. I love it so much. Not only does that look cool, but check it out with a flame inside of it. It lets more than enough light through and it just looks so cool. Though I wanted to add just a little bit more like barbarian charm to it. So I just went back in with some red paint and painted some runes on it. Just, you know, because I'm not that creative, it is the Daedric writing from Skyrim, and it spells out fire. It's more like a warning than anything else. It's like caution, hot stuff. I just thought that was kind of fun. But look at it. Look at how awesome that is. Hopefully you can kind of see, I got the candles in there with the light kind of here, it's drowning it out a bit. But it definitely has that really rustic, almost barbarian vibe. Exactly what I was going for. And the whole project was like, what? $9 for the little bag of bones. Super fun, super cool, and because that bag came with so many, I could technically make like way more. Although, I will give you one more little hot tip when it comes to sourcing your rawhide. I still think that is the cheapest way to go. But if you want to do less work, you could always get a drum head. This actually came too late for me. I wasn't able to find a lot of sellers on Amazon, and the sellers I did find like took a long time to deliver. But it is like paper thin. Like even with nothing done to it, like look at, you can see the light going, right through it. Again, that might be washed out there. Oh, it's dusty. You definitely want to like wet it down first. But there's a lot to use. You can definitely get like maybe 2 or 3 lanterns if you're creative with this right here. It's got that same look and feel, and it'll probably just be a lot easier than you trying to flatten out these pieces of bone. Wow, pop, so much dust. What the hell did they coat it with? Okay, that's fine, we're fine. But okay, fair viewer, okay. Let's say you want that same kind of like look, but you don't want to go through all of that stretching and all the other stuff we just went through. I had exactly 1 day left to get this all edited, but I realized that might be a question and I wanted to answer it somehow. So I decided to make a whole other lantern for you. Maddie's very upset with me. It makes things take much longer than it should. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to talk about how difficult it can be to kind of plan these episodes and really think them all the way through. Magic Mind are these little mental performance shots that are specifically designed to help you stay clear and focused throughout the day. I've used it before, but I really wanted to try out their 7-day challenge. So I took 1 shot a day for 7 days as I was working. And as somebody who tends to get really distracted by everything very easily, I found that Magic Mind actually helped out a lot. After adding it to my routine, I found that I was just able to focus a lot longer and get a lot more done within that focus time. Not only that, but I found I've been a little bit less stressed while I was doing it, and my sleep seemed to be better too. I don't know. I'd be eager to see what you think. Definitely give this one a try. To help you give it a shot, pun totally intended, they have a special Black Friday deal for our community that's 50% off until December 6th. Just click on my link below to get you there. All right, cool. Without much further ado, let's build us a lantern. To do this lantern, I just went ahead and drew some circles onto some pine board. It's kind of a chunky pine board. It's all I had lying around, but this is an experiment. We're trying something out here. These circles, I just went back in with my jigsaw and cut out. But if you go to like a craft store or something, they definitely sell just little wood rounds, they're called. You can just buy a bunch of little wood rounds. Perfectly fine. Now, because I want this next part to make like the pillars that hold everything up to land in exactly the same place, I just went ahead and screwed right through the middle of both pieces. I also used this opportunity to clean up the edges, so again, they work out being exactly the same. While these were together, I put another circle inside, just kind of inset about 1/2 inch. Then I used this 1/2 drill bit, and using that circle as a guide, I put 4 circles all the way through both rounds. Again, this way we know those holes will land in exactly the same spots. All right, so next I just unscrewed that top one from the bottom, and I used this hole saw to make a big hole in the middle. This is gonna give us the place where we can like put our candle into, right? That hollow area. Also, it gives a place for the heat to go out from, so it's not just burning the top of the candle holder. Though the way I'm making this, we're probably going for like LED candles more than anything else. You'll see why in a minute. Now, you remember earlier I used that 1/2 drill bit, and that is because I had these 1/2 dowels here. These I cut to be about 10 inches tall or so. To get them into place, I just kind of put a little bit of glue on the end and carefully tap them into those holes with a hammer. Again, I'm letting these dowels be a little bit long so they can act as the feet of my lantern. All right, cool. So once I have all of these in place, I don't want to put that top on yet because I want kind of a mechanism to work in here. Basically, I've seen like some of these ones here that have a tiny little plate inside connected to a rod. This way, you can grab that rod and pull it up, and that tray raises. So you can put your candle on it, you can light it or whatever, or if it's an LED, turn it on, place it, and then sink the candle back down so you're not trying to like reach inside and light things up. I just thought that was really useful and cool, and I wanted to incorporate it in this. And to make that, I discovered that this little jar lid here fits perfectly. I simply used some of this 14 gauge steel wire that I had to tightly wrap around the lip of that jar and act as my little mechanism, bending it at this 90-degree angle so that I can pick it up and lower it down as I need to. To accept that, I also drilled a small hole into the top so I can actually thread that thing through. To put it all together, I just added some glue to the holes where the dowels will go, threaded that wire through the hole, then lined up all the dowel holes so I can lightly tap it into place. And once those dried, I just went back in with my flush saw and made sure I cut all of those nice and flush. Then finally sanded everything nice and smooth just so it looked good. Now, this is supposed to be just a really fast experiment, but I don't like things looking kind of like half done, so I also decided to stain it. You can stain it, paint it, do whatever you want to it. I just need to add some kind of color so it didn't look raw wood to me. Okay, so now that we have our frame here, it's time to do the rawhide replacement. And for this, I'm actually just using this parchment paper here. It's nice and thick and has a cool color to it. First, I went ahead and measured it against my little lantern frame here, and then cut them to size. Now notice, one piece of paper, it doesn't make it all the way around my lantern. So I just went ahead and cut 2 pieces of paper so I knew I'd have enough running room. Though it isn't very transparent, right? You want to really let some light kind of come through. To help fix that, all I had to do is lay it down and actually just spray it with some cooking oil spray. And once you've wiped it away and it's had some time to dry, look at how much more clear it makes this paper. It has a cool look and it really lets light through very easily. But now you also see why I'm recommending using like LED candles for this one, right? Because you have like pine. I mean, I wouldn't use pine if I were you. If you really wanted this to be something that lasts, use a hardwood. But you've got wood surrounded by oiled paper. I don't know if it could be any more flammable. Though if you really wanted to, I suppose you could probably like glue that paper right to like, I don't know, like a plexiglass, like a really thin plexiglass. That would probably work, but it would also be more work because then you have to cut the plexiglass into shape. But honestly, I mean, especially if you're at an event, LEDs are dope. You don't have to worry about them. That's nice. All right, so once those papers are all dried, I just added a little bit of Elmer's glue to the edge of one of them and stuck the other one to it. Once this has had some time to cure, I then add some more glue to the little spokes of my frame here and carefully wrap the whole thing around it, holding it into place until it dries. With that, we're just about good to go. Just time for a little bit of fit and finish here. To make it look just a little bit more pretty, I added all these little rounded tacks to the edges of it, just for a little extra interest. I also went in with the stamp here to add a little bit of this age effect just to the corners and the edges of the paper. Finally, I bent down my wire, cut it short, and just gave it this jaunty little twist here to make it look interesting. Now I simply pull it up, put my candle into place, and check that out. That's really cool. It looks really good. It lets a whole bunch of light through. And again, this little thing here is great. I can get to my candle, turn it on, put it back in place, lower it down, bam, nice and easy. I kind of love that. I think that's cool. For one more touch, I just wanted to add it so it was like an actual lantern, so I could carry it around or I could hang it up in the tent, which is like super needed. And doing that was really simple. I just grabbed some more wire and bent it in half, using this stick to make this kind of pinch point here so I'd have a good place to hang it. After cutting it to length, I bent the ends at a 90-degree angle and then drilled little holes in either side of my top to accept those ends into. And that's it. Now I have this cool, like, it can hang, I can carry it in the night. You can just kind of place it on the table and this just comes right down. I think that's pretty cool. And again, super cheap. Not as cheap as like sticks you find outside, though I'm sure you can make these two be one if you really wanted to. But there you have it, 2 easy and fun and cheap lanterns for your adventuring experiences. I really do hope you found this useful and fun. If you can think of any other cool ways or materials we can use, definitely leave it down in the comment section below. Also, it'd be really cool to leave down in the comment section below if you liked this. Not just like the standard YouTube like, tell me if you liked it, but do you like these kind of projects? Do you like these kinds of things? I really want to start tailoring the channel to making sure it's getting all the things that you really want to see. So yeah, let me know down below what you do want to see. If you like this, if you like things like it, or you'd like another direction, just let me know. In the meantime though, keep leveling up, you. You've made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It's a fantastic way to support this channel. Another fantastic way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and we cannot do this without you. Special shout out to our newest high tier Patreon members, Martin Tilley, Dakota Lowhorn, and Wade Towner. And an extra special shout out to our Grandmaster tier Patreon members, Dragon Designs, Froggy, and WildFox99. Again, we really can't do any of this without, like, it's not hyperbole. It's because of you we're able to afford doing any of this. So thank you so much. If you like what we do here enough to want to support us in that way, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you can click on one of these videos that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that really helps a lot too. Or, you know, share it with friends or whatever. All right, we're running a camp this year, and I have like 200 more of these to make. Now you know why I wanted them cheap.